walk through some of the key features about a grouped frequency distribution table. Now this one is already completed, but when you're asked to provide a grouped frequency distribution table, including proportion and percentage, this is what you should be looking at. So APA format requires that we start the lowest at the bottom, moving up to higher numbers at the top. Always low to high. We never go high to low. That's other formats. We're going to be learning APA format. In addition, some key things are that these intervals, remember these are like rows, should all have equal width. If you notice, the widths on these are all the same. If you count 0, 1, 2, 3, there are 4 numbers included in that. If you count 4, 5, 6, 7, there's 4 numbers in that. They should all be equal. There should never be any differences. Now we should always start our bottom with 0. Now if you don't have scores, let's say maybe our scores didn't start until 8. Let's say right here, this 8. Let's say that was the lowest number we have. I'd be perfectly fine if at this lower you had 0 to 7, just to incorporate all the ones that you don't have. And then of course this would be 0, this would be 0, and this would be 0. But in this data set we did have information that culminated all the way down into that 0 interval, so it was easy to include. Now again, our frequencies are just how many times do scores appear within those data points. So one score fell between 0 and 3. Now we don't know, because we don't have the raw data set, whether that score was 0, whether it was 1, whether it was 2, or whether it was 3. But we do know that there was one score. In my original data set, our sample size was 14, equals 14. We can, when you're doing this, sometimes if you have a larger data set, it's hard to keep track of your numbers, and it could be easy to miss a number or actually count a number twice on accident. So you should always add up this column, and it should equal what your sample size should be, or is. And in this case, if we add this up, n equals 14. Now our proportion column, which is this column right here, is exactly what it sounds. It's proportion, and we get this by doing P equals our frequency divided by n. So in this case, let's say we're going to look at this 16 through 19. We had 3 people. Now with the frequency of 3, that is our 3, and we're going to divide that by how many total possible? So 14. So that's how I came up with this 0.2143. And I usually keep 4 decimals just so that when I convert this to a percentage for this 4th column, I can easily see what the percentage falls at, and I'm not doing too much rounding. Sometimes this doesn't always add up to 100%, but it should be close. It should be very close. So to get my percentage, I just take this proportion and move the decimal over 2 places. It's the same thing as multiplying by 100. Move the decimal over 2 places. It's key that you're being careful about your numbers and rounding and things, because that could be problematic. It could get very far away from 100%. But this is the basic idea of what a grouped frequency distribution should look like. You should be starting at 0, moving up with intervals that are equal in width. Remember, the width is how many numbers are included in each interval. And in this case, our width equals 4. This is what your grouped frequency distribution should look like. Obviously, for your hybrid activity, you have a larger data set with a wider range of numbers. But it should, in the end, you should have all 4 columns. It should be starting at 0. Your width should be equal. Your frequency column should add up to your sample size. And then you should have a proportion column and a percentage column. The key is proportion is always reported as a decimal, never as a fraction. Now you try it in your hybrid activity and see how you do.